Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President, Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training. My special guest today is Terii Jacob, who is the Senior Director, HR for Japan, Korea, and Micronesia. That's a lot of territory to cover for one guy. He must be traveling a lot or just very, very busy.
There has been a lot of traveling, I'll give you that.
So, Terii, you've been with the Hilton, I guess, a while. You've probably had a number of different jobs over the years. The focus for us is on leadership. So just to give people a bit of an idea, go back into your career a little bit and just tell us how it is that you've come to become the Senior Director for HR for Hilton in this region.
Thanks. I've actually held a number of Asia-Pacific regional roles in HR and talent across Hong Kong and Singapore, mostly in the financial services. I've worked with MetLife and UBS in the past as well, but I've been with Hilton now 4.5 years now.
Okay.
And just prior to this, I was actually also back in Hong Kong, also having an Asia-Pacific talent role.
Mm-hmm. So if we sort of think about your career, how is it you got to Asia? I mean, where did you grow up here? Did you grow up in the States? Give us some more of the background here. Fill in the blanks a bit for us.
So I'm actually born and raised here. My mother is Japanese. My father is from New Zealand. The accent is closer to American because I went to the American school. So
I don't hear any Kiwi accent there at all.
Yeah.
At all, zero accent.
So at the age of 5, they corrected my accent, as they told me. Yes, here we go. Went to university in the U.S. and then came back to Japan immediately after. Took on some HR management trainee work in consumer services. Worked in Japan for about 2.5 years. Then Singapore, and just kind of back and forth between Singapore, Japan, Hong Kong, back and forth twice. My wife is from Hong Kong, but had always that relationship with Japan because that still arguably is home. For myself.
Yeah. Well, you grew up here, so
I did.
that's
Yes,
natural,
my parents are actually still here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, in terms of in the different roles that you've had over the years, if you think back, and I'm thinking about Japan now, but it's good that you've had leadership roles outside of Japan. So it's always good to contrast.
Yes.
How things go, and so if we think about in your leadership role. What did you find worked well to get people engaged to follow you as the leader? What things did you find was valuable to get that happening?
Sure. And would you like me to put that in the context of just Japan or just
overall
in Asia Pacific?
Particularly Japan. If you want to contrast it with other countries, that's fine. But I mean, we are thinking about the topic is leading in Japan. So
sure.
But your management leadership career is built over different countries, right, and different locations. So you're accruing experiences, but when you get here, well, you've grown up here, so undoubtedly you speak the language fluently, you know the culture.
Yes.
It's not the same thing as an expat being
Yes.
sent in, but still, your experiences give you insights into how to do things, and then you adjust those to Japan. So what are the things that you found have worked well to be a leader in Japan, have people engaged to follow you?
Yes. I think there's no shortcut around this. So it's a really authentic relationship. In Japan, it does take longer to build rapport with your direct reports and your team members and to build trust in that same extent. Whereas my experiences in Hong Kong and Singapore, they're quick to get running. You build a rapport really quickly. Team camaraderie comes really quick. I think in Japan, there's just always the barrier of politeness at the beginning. Right? You're still a stranger, the tani, until you become, you build that relationship where you can start to disclose your personal things outside of work. And then once you're able to get to that level of relationship, then I think you really build a strong bond, a strong trust with your team members.
I find that interesting because, as an Australian, I came to Japan when I was 25. Mm-hmm. No context, no experience of Japan culture path through martial arts training, which didn't help that much. So it's an obvious thing for someone like me who's coming from outside, real tannin, to try and have that rapport building. But you're nakama, you're inside, you're inside the castle here. And so I'm just interested, do you still find that there's for you that gap that's slower than, say, if you're in a different country like Singapore or Hong Kong? You would think, given you're grown up here, your background, your language skills, you just slot in just like a Japanese.
I do think my experience is probably quicker than, for example, someone, a gaijin, for example. Most definitely. The time will be quicker for me. But still, I am perceived in most cases a little bit of a threat. who's this, guy coming from another gaishke, also financial services, now in hospitality. He's half Japanese, but he's a foreigner as well. Who's this guy? So I think there's a little bit of that threat. But once they get to know you, that guard comes down. But it's still the guard. You definitely feel that guard.
I mean, that's interesting. I guess for people watching this show, they'd be thinking, wow, Terii Jacobs, he's grown up here, he's got the language down, it'll just be slotted there perfectly, looks like another Japanese. But still, as you say, the unknown outside. So thinking about that, what things did you find worked well for you? And was there anything you brought from outside, or just things you had to create inside in Japan to try and build that rapport and particularly build the engagement to follow your ideas?
Right. You got to be patient. Right. And I don't come in with the attitude here Terii comes in to change everything all at once. First, seek to understand, right? Yes, I am, part Japanese. I understand the culture very well, but I was new to hospitality.
Okay.
So there's also that, who's this guy coming from another industry? So first seek to
He's coming
understand.
from the cutthroat world of finance, where it's take no prisoners. And here he is in the hospitality industry. We have to be nice to people. So he's obviously not a cultural fit. I guess is probably ticking through the mind somewhere.
Funny you say that, but the way to keep the people's hearts and engagement is all the same. I still believe it, whether it's financial industry or hospitality or consumer goods. So it's just really seek to understand and be a bit more patient and before swinging around saying these are the things we're going to change. Yeah, I did picture a big vision. This is where I eventually want to take it, but I didn't say, hey, we're going to start doing this next week. I probably waited 3 months before I actually did introduce some things that I wanted to do and execution plans.
So if we think on the micro, you're new to the company, you're new to the industry, you have to engage people to follow you. So at the sort of micro level, what things did you find worked well to get people to start accepting you and appreciate you and start to follow you?
Spending time with not just the senior people, but also the Gemba, if you will, team members on the ground. Because, I work with mostly general managers at our hotels, as well as the directors of HR. And the directors of HR do not have a solid reporting line to myself. They have a solid reporting line. So someone who's
the head of HR in the Hilton Hotel here, we're in Shinjuku Hilton, that person reports to you?
Directly has a direct solid reporting line to the GM and a dotted or functional reporting line to me.
Oh, okay,
yes, because GMs do have to run each of their hotel as their own business.
Right.
So it kind of makes sense that the reporting line is structured that way.
So it's not the other way around.
No,
it's not like a matrix with the category or the sort of
the function.
Functionality.
And funny enough, in corporate world, it is. For example, I report directly into the APAC head of HR as opposed to the VP of Japan, Korea, Micronesia, but. They're both your bosses. It doesn't really make a difference. You got to keep both parties happy. But in the properties, they're actually, not physically located with us. And we've got now close to 30 trading properties. I can't spend all that time, but I try and make an effort to go to the hotels at least once each year. Spend time not with just the GM, but directors of HR and their heads of departments, their leaders, and not just the leaders, but also the teams to really understand what are their pain points. How do we increase the team member experience for all of us?
Felix, who's the GM for the property here, the Shinjuku Hilton, kindly walked me over to this location. We're having a chat on the way, and he's mentioning how Hilton got number 3 in best places to work and number 1 in the hospitality industry in Japan, which is incredible. So well done. And I always think that HR, particularly in Japan, I think, is feared by Japanese because it's the thought police, it's the rule police, it's the determination of where your postings are going to be, and big companies are going to send you to some boondocks place if you don't toe the line, or they've got the black book of, someone so-and-so did something bad or got something wrong or didn't have a good result, and that's going to hit you later as you get up the pyramid towards the top, and it's going to be that guy or that gal and you, and it's them, not you. So HR does not necessarily in Japan have a particularly positive vibe for most people. They fear HR, I think. Great that you got number 3, best place to work. So maybe you've got a culture here that gets around that. But you came out from finance into hospitality. You've been in HR, yes, but HR in Japan, I think, has got a little bit of that tarnish to it. How did you think about try, as you say, you're talking to people again about to build that trust, to build the relationship with people, because the vibe is not possibly good from a lot of people's point of view about HR. How did you, again, to get them engaged to follow you, how did you make that work?
Right. So I totally hear what you're saying. Japanese dramas probably don't do it justice that's how they, position the HR function as these guys moving people around. And there is a slightly dark image. I do think it is changing. Even Japanese companies now are going on a strategic HR, trying to really think about team member or employee experience, because now you just a manpower shortage, right? And
Absolutely,
all industries are feeling this. So they really by nature have to lift their HR practices. Now, fortunately, we're a Gaishike company, and we not only strive to be number one just in Japan, but globally. In fact, U.S. just got number one great place to work across all industries. A couple of our countries in Europe and Asia Pacific also got number one. So we hope to get there number one. In Japan, we weren't always number one. In fact, 2 years ago, we didn't even make the list. We were certified for a great place to work, but we were not ranked.
Where's the rank cut out? What number?
Japan does it a bit weird, but they do it by size of the company. So I think only the top 12 make the list if you're a large company, and then medium size is like 30 something, and then the small size companies you get top 50 rank.
So it's not a big number given the number of companies in Japan. It's not. If you make the top 50, 30 or top 12, it's pretty impressive just to even get on the list.
Correct.
So you've gone from being outside that list to number 3.
3 in 2 years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And that was a journey. I wouldn't say we did that overnight. We really studied into the demographics, the data, what we were doing wrong, what could we do better. So I think just to get people to follow, I wouldn't say follow, but come with me. How could I lift everyone up to come on this journey with me is really to connect us with as many people as possible, seek what are their pain points. We knew compensation was areas we needed to fix, which we've put measures into that. We wanted to really make sure team members had a good well-being, both mental and physical. Our annual leave ratio was not as good as we wanted it to be, so we really doubled down on that.
So annual leave ratio for people sitting outside of Japan would mean they're not taking enough annual leave.
Correct.
As opposed to they're stealing days from the company and taking more time than they're allowed, right? So, I mean, if you don't know Japan, and I have the same problem, I monitor very carefully every month the leave. I encourage people to take their leave. I brought in extra sick days because I was thinking they weren't taking their leave because they were using it for 6 days. Made absolutely no difference at all. And it's a psychological thing here. And they can only accumulate it for 2 years. Like someone in my company, if you're on the company for a year and 1 day, you've got 40 days of leave, and then it only have a max 40, but, they've got 38 left or 37 left or, gee, you guys, what are you doing? So yes, the ratio is important.
Yeah, and that's a basics, right? How can you have good mental well-being if you're not even getting enough rest?
You're taking the time off here. I mean, there are 16 public holidays here. That's true,
True, but in the hospitality industry, it doesn't work like that.
It doesn't work like that, right? Yeah, it doesn't work
so
like that.
we have something called special leave, where you're basically a day off in lieu of your public holidays, and we're tracking that as well.
Well, you have shift work as well, which is
correct.
hard.
Correct. So understanding really the pain points, we understand why you're not able to take annual leave, and so we just doubled down. We started tracking, measuring, publishing lists across hotels so that people.
Although when you're in the finance business, and depends, I guess, on the rank, but you have forced leave. I mean, they say you will take 2 weeks off consecutive
compulsory leave,
and disappear because you've been doing anything untoward. It'll come up in the 2 weeks you're away. You can't mask it. So they do it from a compliance point of view almost, rather than a welfare, well-being viewpoint, but they do it and they force people to do it.
Yeah, and you really cannot check emails.
I wonder if I should do that. I should say to people, right, everyone's got to take at least a week off every year and just try and force them to have a holiday and force them to rest and force them to do something else. Yeah, might be an idea. I might think about that. So how did you get to number 3? I mean, that's an impressive jump from not even on the rank to get to number 3 and number 1 in the hospitality industry. So amazing. So
So again, going back basics, you got to do that basic housekeeping, right? So the things I talked about, like compensation, housekeeping, that's actually, compensation and annual leave, sick leave, all that stuff, that's hygiene. You got to clean that up first. And so we actually did that over the last few years, harmonized policies, just really put the team member first in mind when we started to craft these policies and simplified them so the team member understands them and get the culture that it's okay to take leave, right? So we really doubled down on that. And also what a lot of the great GMs did, because obviously we have scores ranging from good to great, and maybe some are mediocre within our portfolio. And the great GMs, what they really focused on was recognition. Team member recognition, and this can come as performance-related recognition, when a team member of the month, things of that sort. And this can also be small things like birthdays. So some GMs will do monthly birthday lunches. So gather everyone who's had a birthday that month and just take them out for lunch or dinner. Long service. We really emphasize that at Hilton, the 5, 10, 15, 20. There's a financial recognition to it, but then also more importantly is the make a dinner or a meal with the leadership team. And these things, small things, these human experiences, something that Hilton has really tried to embrace, because there are some lifetime moments, having a child, getting married, recognizing these human experiences, I think has really helped our engagement score go up.
And also, when you're recognizing birthdays or you're recognizing time in the company, 5, 10, 15, 20 years or whatever, that's, in a Japanese context, acceptable. One of the issues, though, often for people is they come to Japan and they think, well, top performers, get them up on the stage. Hey, Terii, you're the #1 sales guy. Yay, fantastic. Hey, everyone, Terii, look at Terii. But often in Japan, yes, some Japanese want to be on the stage, but a lot of Japanese don't want to be on the stage. They don't want to be singled out. They don't want to step out from the crowd. They don't want to step out from the teammates and be recognized, because they worry about knives in the back and bitching and whinging. There you go, or she goes again, polishing the apple with the boss, and they don't deserve it. I should have got that type of thing. So I found that too. I found initially people would be happy about it, right? You realise some of them, no, the private dinner, lunch, perfect. Public recognition, not so perfect. So I think there's also a degree of knowledge of the people required to match how you do it with what actually happens, isn't there? Right.
Perhaps so. And there might be risks of, like you said, some people feeling a bit jealous, whatever. But I think there's a bigger risk of not recognizing the majority who do want to see their work recognized. And not everything has to be, put on stage and big applause. Some we just put up, some hotels will just put up team member of the month just on the wall. And so it's not a big splash, but at least they're being recognized. Also, we do team member recognitions too, peer recognitions.
Peer to peer.
Yeah. So thank you appreciation week, and peers will recognize each other. It's an opportunity for managers to write thank you cards. It should happen normally without doing, but sometimes it's good that there's a corporate initiative or a company initiative behind it to say, hey, this week let's try and do it.
Well, the old metaphor, isn't it, is that you love your partner, you just forget to tell them.
Yes.
You know it, you think they know it, and you forget to verbalize it.
Correct.
And I think if you take that metaphor into business, we really do appreciate our people. We've got it, but it doesn't come out of here as often as it should have. And I put my hand up on camera right now as guilty right over here, because I think it, but I know I don't say it enough. And I think that's a good point too. We have to remember that. What other things helped you think to get you to #3 and #1 in hospitality, best place to work in Japan?
I don't think there's too much of a secret sauce to it.
Is that across all of the Hilton hotels, or is that just this particular Hilton, that prize? Is it?
That prize is for all the Hilton hotels in Japan.
So you've got a lot of properties here.
Yes.
So when I think about that too, that's even more amazing, because I can understand a single company getting the prize. But as you say, each of these properties operate fairly, I'm not going to say independently, but they stand on their own 2 feet and they have their own way of doing things culturally. So to get that prize across all properties, that's something else.
So the way the survey, it's because it's a survey, and we also have to submit practices that we do. So they do looked at us as one
They see it
entity,
as one
though.
unit.
Yeah,
Okay,
yes,
right.
yes. But we have our team members from most of our hotels participate.
And do you have I'm just curious, do you have employee satisfaction surveys or engagement surveys that you run as well?
Yes. So we have our own internal one.
Internal one, right? And so does that also reflect a sort of continuity across the properties, or do you have quite disparate outcomes within the group?
So there is a range, and that's what I'm meaning. We have some great, some that are mediocre, a few that are mediocre, some are good, and then a few are great. We're trying to uplift everybody, obviously, but what I can say is over the last few years, we have lifted everybody.
Okay.
That's been consistent.
It sounds like it, yeah.
Yes.
And kudos to you guys for being able to do that, because it's not easy. You can do a lot with financial controls. You can do a lot with technology, but people,
Yes.
people, not so easy. So if we think about, you've had a lot of, sounds like, centrally organised, top-down initiatives to try and improve how things are working, surveys and Gemba conversations and this sort of thing. But there's always that opportunity for the bottom-up. And a lot of companies don't really do anything around the bottom up. And often my experience with middle managers, my metaphor for middle managers is they're like like this building. And this building below us is a concrete floor, and above us is a concrete floor for the next level. And they're like that. They suck up. They got a sponge on the top that sucks up all the stuff from upper echelons, or it could be globally from the company. They get all the information. They're on top of everything. But then that sponge has got a big solid concrete layer below it. And the people at the bottom, that doesn't filter down. They don't pass that information down. They sort of suck it up, keep it as a strength or a reserve or a power play. I don't know why the hell they keep it, but they don't pass it down. Whereas the people sitting at the top of the tree think, oh yeah, our middle managers are a conduit, taking our thoughts and our ideas and our context and our background and our thinking down to the very bottom level, so that top to bottom, everyone understands what we're doing, why we're doing it, where we're going, what we need to do to achieve it.
Yes.
But often that's not the case, and particularly in Japan, I think. So in terms of getting ideas to come up, what have you found has worked well in Japan?
So something that we're actually starting to do now is actually focus groups at the Gemba level.
Is this a new initiative?
Yes, that's something that I've started earlier this year that I'm going to try to get out to the hotels with just two of my corporate HR folks. And we'll
So
try
do you
to
do it like
cover
the
all.
classic, commercial marketing focus group with a one-way mirror, and they sitting there and you've got the facilitator and you're all sitting behind the glass listening to this. There's a transcripts being taken, understand what people have been saying. Is it like that?
No, it'll literally be like 4 or 6, team members in a room together with myself, and the HR of the property won't be there. And we'll just have honest conversations about how we can uplift their team member experience. What's working for them? Why have some of the team members, your peers and colleagues, why have they left? Tell me more. What could we be doing better? It's really a casual conversation like that. But I already got, if you've done a few hotels already, got some great insight. I want to do a few more to just validate some of my hypotheses, and before we roll out new initiatives, right, to make it better. Now, I also don't want to take away from the work that happens on the property level, because the leadership teams and the directors of HR and the HR teams do a lot of stuff, not just the stuff that we roll out, but they do a lot of stuff at their own property level too. Every year after we do an internal survey, they come up with their action plans and try to address these things, right?
And are those action plans, again, are these ideas that are bubbling up from the bottom, or is this the genius GM who's got all the experience and got tapped into the global world of Hilton, understand what's going on, and they're directing it? I mean, I'm interested in that. Any company, how do we get ideas out of people,
right,
so that we can make the most of what they've got? Because often that doesn't happen at all.
Yeah. And I think you're right, because there will be stuff that the GM wants to do. There'll be things that the directors, and then we call them heads of departments, so for example, the F&B, food and beverage team will probably want to do some things themselves, but it's probably not bottom up. which is why I wanted to embark on this kind of initiative this year, where we try and get bottom up. And it's been interesting because some of these conversations I've already said, it kind of goes to your point earlier about messages not cascading down. Well, certainly enough, in my past few conversations, I've learned that some of the initiatives that we've rolled out, the awareness at the Gemba level, the frontline level, was not there.
I don't know what you're talking about, Terii. It's easy. You just send them the email. You send out the broadcast email, explain to everybody, you're good, you're done. They all know it, which we know is not true. Right? We know that's so frustrating. I do that. I'll send an email to everyone and I think, we got it. And then you have the conversation and you realize we ain't got it. They haven't understood it, or they haven't put it together in the context, or they don't get the reasoning, or they don't see why this is important. They don't see where they should be involved. There's a whole raft there around the communication piece, isn't there?
Yes. And, to make, I don't know if this is better or worse, but not every team member has an email account at the hotels. So communication actually has to happen via town halls or through the supervisory chain, or we basically, by our team member canteens or cafeterias or restaurants, what we call them, there will be a lot of flyers posted around, messages from the GM, HR initiatives, things of that sort. So that's how we kind of communicate.
So it's quite analog.
It is.
Really?
Now we're trying to digitize some of that via some new HR tools like Smart HR, where now we have direct communication to HR, but it's not an email account, right? So we only put in important messages. But yeah, it is.
When I was working for Shinsei Bank, Rico de Blanc, who you may have heard of, was the founder of the Ritz-Carlton in Osaka. Then I met him there. Then he came up to Tokyo, started the Ritz-Carlton in Tokyo. Unfortunately, he passed away of cancer very young. Lovely guy, And he gave a talk at the Shinsei Bank on their 12 precepts around customer service. It was really great. And I wangled out of my boss, Sajeev Thomas at the time, a trip to the Ritz-Carlton Training Center in Washington, D.C. And I spent a week there. And it was interesting, their concepts around unifying the mentality across the globe, because they're a global organization like you, across the different departments, across the different shifts, was very well organized. And they had, like, for example, these precepts of how to deal with the clients, the customers that have these principles. And every day in every unit of every property, every shift, one of these, they're on screens. The principle will be there. Today's principle is X, Y, Z. And then by turn, someone in the group would lead the discussion and talk about what that principle meant to them. And then they'd go through the other things, like a typical chore day, what's going on in the day, what's coming up, who's coming, blah, blah, blah. But that's having set principles, having them unified around the world, done every day, every language, every shift. I thought that was impressive, and I adopted that into Shinsei when I came back, and I've adopted into Dale Carnegie. We have to go through our principles. We have 60 of them, 30 stress management, 30 human relations principles. We rotate through them, alternating every day, to really absorb the concepts.
Right.
So that was very impressive. And I thought about, wow, how difficult it is to get a united front across the globe, across shifts particularly, and often when you've got part-time workers as well.
Yes.
So it becomes very, very magnified, isn't it? In terms of trust, what have you found works well to develop trust?
I think it kind of goes back to some of the points I made earlier, but it just got to be patient, right? It takes time. You keep doing the good things right, and I think that trust will build. You just can't happen to rush it or try to do it overnight. Ideally, you start to build a little bit of that personal relationship, but you have to disclose first before they will disclose too.
And what are we disclosing? I mean, how far are we going here? Because we have this idea of vulnerability, right? Leader vulnerability. For most people, leader vulnerability would equal 0 because they attach the status position as leader as their source of authority, and any vulnerabilities, weaknesses, lacking, whatever, is felt that this is diminishing my authority, and therefore people won't listen to me, won't follow me because they won't respect me. So I have to be Superman or Superwoman, no mistakes, inviolable, perfect in every regard. So there's that contrast, isn't there? I have to be perfect, not authentic, of course, or I can be vulnerable and be authentic. So, it's a little bit your thinking around how do you balance out not being perfect and having authority and keeping authority with the vulnerability, because a lot of people, they're scared to go there.
Yes. And my view of leadership is more of a servant leadership attitude. So I believe in uplifting the team more than the team executing my directives. So I'm perfectly happy to share my vulnerabilities, right? Because I think that's how you build trust, and for them to want to help you. Because then that's the trust and the want to help, as opposed to, I don't know if it's trust. They might fear you, they may respect you, but do they inherently want to help you? Probably not, if it's a fear-based relationship.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Leading is easy. Getting people to follow is the hard part. That is a great quote from Yogi Berra. Surprisingly, despite the complexities of leading here in Japan, everyone has to work it out by themselves. Foreign leaders want practical, applicable, expert advice. This is now available for the first time in history. Grab your copy of Japan Leadership Mastery on Amazon today and avoid the mystery, trial and error, especially the errors. Well, where's the boundary line? I mean, where do you say, I will expose my vulnerabilities up to this point and no further? How do you determine where's the line?
That's a good question. I haven't really thought of it too much, but I think there's also, you might disclose more, whatever you're comfortable with, but I don't think you can expect the same for your team members to disclose the same. Everyone's got their different comfort zone, and maybe over time they will, and maybe they won't. I think you have to be comfortable with that.
Well, how do you become comfortable with yourself, though? Where's your line? How do you determine, I'm going to go this far but no further? Where do you draw that line? How do you draw that line?
I think it's just a gut feel. Yeah, I think there is some basic common sense to it. I think we're all been in corporate life long enough to know where that point is. It's hard to actually explicitly say what that is, but I think there is that fine line between where you won't cross.
Well, I think also it's changed. I mean, when I first started in business, your personal life was completely off limits to what was going on with your boss, completely off limits, and vice versa. And it was very much a business relationship. It was business, nothing personal, nothing involving you and what's going on in your life. However, 2025, here we are. We've had different generations coming through with different expectations, different thought processes about this. A lot of them now, they're getting to a stage where their parents are aging. They've got kids, but they've got parents, so there's a lot of stresses on them, perhaps more so than previous generations. Often wives are also working. So it's not, one person at home as the chief carer. It's actually balancing both of you working, both of you caring. So there's a lot more stress on people today. And so that whole raft of things, I think, makes it a little bit different in terms of what people are prepared to expect from the company in terms of leeway than in the past. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, one thing we've really tried to encourage is flexibility. We have our set work hours at the corporate office, and obviously at the hotels.
Do people work from home here, or everyone's in the office?
We can. We don't have a fixed one saying, hey, 3 days in the office, 2 days work from home. We do not have that policy. We say, hey, talk to within your team, find an appropriate balance. Where there's an issue, you come talk to HR to see if we can help. But for the most part, it hasn't. We haven't taken the firm stance as some companies have. You have to all come back. But generally, I find in Japan, most people still do, because a lot of people do not have a quiet space at home, or, high-speed internet, or maybe they prefer 2 screens or whatever. And so they actually prefer. And people want to come back to work, and that's something that we focused on, is creating a great work environment. We have a team member restaurant where they can go have their meal. We have good coffee, snacks during the day. And I think most people just come back because they like to be with their colleagues.
It's also,
face-to-face interaction.
In your industry too, there is an argument, I suppose, someone could make, that it's unfair to have people in the head office having access to remote work. I've got to turn up, in the genba because I'm serving, or I'm working in the kitchens, or I'm doing the beds, or I can't do the beds remotely, or the kitchen work remotely, or whatever. So, why do I have to turn up every day and these people can lounge around in the headquarters, work remote? It's not fair. I mean, you can see that could be a feeling, perhaps, that this is unfair within the company, that if I've got to turn up every day, then they should turn up every day. But that's not been an issue.
I think COVID kind of was the start where maybe that started to change. I think before COVID, there was none of that, just because in solidarity with the hotels. But COVID encouraged a lot of people, just like any other company, to work remotely. Obviously, the hotel operations people could not, given the nature of their role. But what we're trying to do or explore in our hotels right now is, not every role requires you to be present. For example, there are commercial or sales type roles. There are HR roles. There are marketing type roles that are not customer facing every day. Could those roles be done at home? So we are exploring on a few things, and we started to do that in some of the hotels. Obviously, if you choose an operations role, that's a bit difficult given the nature of the job, but we're also now trying to find ways to increase flexibility in operations so that people have they're better able to find shifts that better suit their work-life balance. Some people might want to work more, some people might want to work less. So we're trying to play around with some tools. Digital tools are now helping us with how we think of rosters, so something that we're actually playing around with right now. But that is a nut we're trying to crack.
Just thinking a bit more about trust, what be some other things you think about in terms of building trust with the team members that's worked well for you?
I think it's just authenticity, right? If you say something, you got to follow through with it. And if you keep flip-flopping, that trust is not going to last very long. I think people want to see consistency.
I think in Japan particularly too, predictability.
Yes, predictability.
I try to keep a very poker face aspect to myself in terms of whatever's going on in turmoil in my mind is not turning up on my face, so that there's always that constant, the boss is always positive, happy, upbeat, always, no matter what's going on, subterraneanly. I think that's part of the consistency too, isn't it? How you present yourself to people is an aspect, and people pick up on it straight away. I related this story before, but I get to the office early. One of my sales guys got in early, and he'd been in the office like 3 seconds, and he looked at me. And he said, "Greg, what's wrong?" Obviously, there was something going on here that I wasn't aware I was showing. It was going on in here, but it was showing up on here as well. And he picked up on it immediately. So I always say that, our employees are gold medal winning boss watchers, and they watch your walk, they watch your posture, they watch your energy, they watch your mood, they watch your facial expression, tone of your voice. They're picking up signals all day long around, is it safe to talk to the boss about this aspect or issue today? Or could I bring this up now, or should I leave it for another day? Boss looks like in a bad mood. So I think bosses tend to underestimate.
I think
so. It just reminded me. I thought I was doing a pretty good job of masking it. It was under control here, right? Obviously didn't have it perfect. He picked up on it straight away. Wow. I didn't mask that well enough. Yeah. So that was a reminder for me, after all these years, it's still, we've got to work on it. So what are the things around trust?
I think in the Japanese context, they'd like to see that the boss will have your back.
And what does that mean?
I think it means if they mess up or mess in front of another team or something like that, the boss will come in to have your back, especially if it's a decision that the boss had made, right? But and then if, example, if a team member tries to execute a decision that the boss had made, but maybe one of the stakeholders said, who came up with this idea? And then the boss runs away from that. I've seen this happen. It's happened to me. Yeah. So I will never leave my team members stranded. I also want to create...
Well, you think about that. You're in a high-pressure situation. You're being called out on whatever the activity decision is, and there's looking for blood for the, the originator, the author of this crazy idea or crazy activity, and your boss just slinks off into the sunset and leaves you out there hanging out to dry. I mean, where's the trust after that? Not only with that one person, but with the entire team, because word travels fast. People don't keep that stuff to them. You can't believe what my boss did to me. Everyone knows. You can't trust the boss. So how do you lead people in that situation? So it's one of the basics, but actually it's one of the things that, as you say, happens. Right?
Yeah. Also, try to never get upset with my team. To create an atmosphere where they can make mistakes and honestly come where there's a problem. Because I'd rather be part of the problem solving than find out before it's too late.
Well, I think particularly too, you've come from the finance industry, which is highly regulated.
Yes.
I was in retail banking, and I know it's highly regulated. FSA has got lots and lots of stringent requirements on the part of the banking staff. And when they depart from those rules, that's one bad thing. But what I found was a really bad thing is when they try and hide it.
Yes.
Because what goes from a minor misdemeanor slap on the wrist becomes execution, you're fired, for the hiding, not for the doing. And I think that's, again, it's a trust issue, or it's a, yes, I'll go and fess up because I know it's not going to be termination. I'm not going to get scolded in front of everybody and humiliated. I can take my punishment and recover. And if I don't think that, then maybe I think I've got to try and squelch this and hide it, and then it just gets too big, and then they're gone. I've seen that. They've gone. Good people gone because of stupid little mistakes.
Yes.
Hiding it.
Hiding
is the
it,
problem.
yes.
Yeah,
precisely. I was with UBS at the time when the big several $billion trader. So there we go. But what I want to just reiterate, though, is while I don't get upset at my team for mistakes, you have to give feedback. You can't shy away from feedback.
No.
But it can be delivered constructively and empathetically.
Well, how do you do that? I've screwed up completely. How would you deliver that empathetically to me?
Done in private, obviously, but try to do it sooner rather than later, because that's also unfair, because it has to be close to the event. Yes. And then it's, they know they messed up. So you don't have to rub it in. You don't need to rub it in.
I mean, it'd be extremely rare case that someone screwed up badly and they didn't know about it.
Yes.
I mean, it may possibly could happen.
It can happen, and they need to be given feedback on that.
I mean, we're talking, 1%, 2%, 3%, I would imagine, out of the scope of things. Usually they know.
Correct.
Yeah.
So why rub it in with salt,
you
right?
made a mistake.
Exactly.
Jacobs, you screwed up.
Exactly.
I know that.
Well, you just talk about how could it have been done better, right?
Yeah.
So, just in private, but still don't shy away from feedback, because feedback means you care. If you stop giving feedback, you don't really care about the person's development.
When we think about culture, you have, the Hilton's got a very, very long history. It was 1919 or something like that was it first started, right? And so it's been going for over 100 years. And in fact, Dale Carnegie, Japan, is very closely tied to the Hilton.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah, Mr. Mochizuki, who started Dale Carnegie in Japan, was a hotelier. And he was in Hong Kong during the war. I forget which one of the big hotels, big Western hotels in Hong Kong. And then after the war came back, he was in MacArthur's Supreme Commander Headquarters, SCAP. and Supreme Commander of the Allied Powers headquarters because he spoke English. And in those days, Japanese couldn't travel, couldn't take money out of the country. But he used his connections in SCAP and he got himself into the Palmer Hotel in Chicago, which is a Hilton property in those days. And he was in the Palmer Hotel as a hotelier, and he noticed that the executives were really good with people. And they're really persuasive, articulate. So he asked one of these executives, how come you guys are all so good at this stuff, And the guy said, Dale Carnegie course. He said, Dale Carnegie course. He put himself on the course. And he was the first Japanese ever to take the course in Chicago. And then years later, came back in 1963. First class was run here in Japan. So that was only a few years after he left the States. So yeah, we always feel a close connection with the Hilton through his connection through the Palmer Hotel in Chicago. So yeah, interesting. Anyway, I digress. But thinking about culture, you've got Hilton Culture Global, you've got Japan Culture, and then you've got, I guess in your case, you've got the Terii Jacobs culture and how you want things to run. How do you make all that sort of work to build a culture, do you think?
Well, I think the reason why I've lasted also 4.5 years with Hilton is their values and principles align with my own values and principles, and some of the things of how they view leadership align with how I view leadership, right? Take, for example, our leadership principles are very simple. It's dream big, have a big vision, right? And then inspire others. You can't just try to do everything yourself. You got to bring. It's not about what you can do in itself. It's about how many people you can bring with you along the way.
But you're coming from the finance business, which has an eat your young culture, a ruthless, side to it, a rigorous financial profit orientation, personal bonus. Very transactional, so none of that stuff is necessary. It may be in a frame on beautiful paper, parchment on the wall, but in the actual rooms, in the actual reality of the dealing rooms, the leadership, how they deal with people, how they think about people, it's not quite living up to the high standards which they proclamate. So, this is always the issue, isn't it? Like we can say that we believe in these things, but actually living them is the issue. So, what are your thoughts on that? Because yes, it's one thing to say, yes, I believe in these things, but how do you interact with people?
Yes. I think in the investment bank side, I did work with the investment bank side as well. And, we still talk these leadership principles, but it was... Yeah, and in the back of my mind, knew that they would always still be driven by individual targets, unless they became into a managerial role and they had a bigger desk target, if you will. Private banking was a little bit better. They still obviously had their individual clients and all that, but once you become to a more managerial, you're looking after a desk again. So these concepts did apply to private banking desk managers. That also was in insurance for a while. And insurance in Japan is very different from the investment banking, much more domestic. And they're very, very big companies, so very Japanese culture. Very
extremely hierarchical. No one's rushing into anything in that industry anytime soon.
And so conservative, and so they're far, I think.
How long did you last in the domestic insurance industry?
So, it wasn't, I worked for MetLife, so it wasn't a Japanese insurance company. But company, MetLife took over Alico, and most Japanese people still believed Alico was a Japanese company.
Well, I bet it ran like a Japanese company even after they took it over as well anyway.
So I did 7 years with MetLife. I think four in Hong Kong, but I was seconded to Japan. So forget where the employment entity was. I think I spent still most of my time in Japan.
Okay. So coming back to culture, how do you build a culture?
So how do I build that culture? First, you got to live it, right? People see your actions. Actions really do speak louder than words. We can talk about all that we want, but if you really don't act on it. So for example, we really wanted to create, a safe work environment for team members, right? We're really team members first, but we knew there were some bad apples, if you will. There were power harassment cases or other types of harassment cases. you had to crack down on that and saying there really was a no tolerance. In the past, there may have been some cases, and that people talk about it, right? Oh, they're getting away with it. I think we really cleaned up some of that. So no tolerance to that type of behavior. And I think that really made a message, because I had team members come appreciate me after these tough decisions.
All of the beautiful wording, but when you're tolerating that type of behaviour, it completely contradicts everything you're saying, and people don't believe it. They look at what they see and they go, well, that's the reality. This person is completely over the line here, power harassment, sexual harassment, whatever harassment it might be, and the company's okay with that. Particularly, and this is the problem, if they're particularly in sales, right, the high-performing sales person, or the dealer, or whatever it might be, their behaviour is encouraged and tolerated because they're making the company so much dough. And if you axe them, then you have a big hole in your target, and then you look bad to your bosses, and it's all this calculations going on. But at the end of the day, though, that person's got to go.
Exactly.
Because they're polluting. They're a toxic influence on everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
And how are you going to build a culture with someone like that who's completely out of line, right?
Correct. So, we used to, a few years back, we went around, myself and my director of HR at the time, one of them, and then we did, power harassment, all types of harassment training at the hotels. And we did it in a way where it's not just a lecture, but case studies.
Yeah.
Where we want, because some are not always black and white. So we wanted to create an atmosphere where people felt comfortable raising questions or saying, am I doing this wrongly? Should I have been doing it better? And that created just better awareness across the hotels.
What do you do about, I'm going to raise a contentious issue here, DEI, because, it's now become politically incorrect in America as far as the government's concerned, and they're rolling it back all over the place. But, I don't know that Japan ever made much headway on DEI anyway. I mean, we have courses in DEI, and we talk to Japanese companies. They do an hour and a half on inclusivity, or they do an hour and a half on unconscious bias. Usually it's unconscious bias, right? They do an hour and a half on unconscious bias seminar. Tick the box, DEI is completed, done, move on, But you ask them, did you ever get to diversity? No, we never got to diversity. Did you ever get to inclusivity? No, we never got to inclusivity either, which is that's the springboard to diversity, is having an inclusive environment.
Correct.
So that whole rationale, regardless of the political direction, doesn't go away. It's wrapped up in engagement, it's wrapped up in how you treat your people, your values, all that stuff. It's all tied in together. So how have you sort of weathered the storm of this turn? I mean, on my card, it's got on the back, it says diversity, equity, inclusion. We don't take it off. You don't want to buy that product from us, fine, but we leave it on there because we think there may be somebody in Japan, at least. I don't know about my colleagues in America, how they're getting on with that, but certainly here we keep it going. But how do you deal with that?
Yeah, so, we are an American company, and so we may not use the terms, for example, D and I, as we used to before, but we still want to be representative of the communities in which we operate. And obviously, in hospitality, we're also seeing a trend where there are increasingly more females in our team member base anyway. Now, obviously, the challenge is raising female or gender representation in more of our senior roles, general managers, and what we call hotel directors. We had annual targets, I want to say probably last year or two, but I'm not more concerned about percentages. I'm more concerned about absolute numbers, because as we increase hotels, our percentages might get worse,
down,
right? And we have been increasing hotels at a pretty rapid pace. But what I can say is 4 years ago, we had one female GM. Now we have 4. At a period, we had a 5 as well, but unfortunately, they went on to a different region. So we're now, all 4 local general managers.
And that's interesting too, because if I think about it, when have I ever heard of or met a female hotel general manager in any country? Not just Japan. I think about Australia. Did I ever meet in Australia or in the States? Europe? No. I'm really struggling to think if I ever came across a female general manager globally. It's
Right.
a very, So 4 is a big deal.
4 is a big deal, especially in Japan. Actually, Australia has done pretty well. I think they're probably into the 20% area already. We do want to try and get to about 25%-ish. But we're not going to say when or because a little bit politically sensitive at the moment, right? So we're not really talking about targets so much, but just continuing what we've always done in terms of the representation of the communities in which we operate. We're also still, our hotels will be participating in the Pride Tokyo event because that is a team member resource group, right? So we try to encourage team members to participate in the team member resource groups like Pride, which is the LGBTQ+, as well as we have our women's team member resource groups where we've really focused on trying to elevate women in leadership. So we have annual conferences where we have 280 female team members across our properties, and we've been focusing on things like, what are some self-restricting beliefs that you might have, and how do we break through those barriers that we've imposed on ourselves? A lot of women tell themselves, right, oh, I can't do that job, or if I have a family, I can't stay in operations, I need to take a back office role. I want to break those beliefs, right? These are just self-limiting beliefs that you're putting on yourself. 2 years in a row, we focus on that. That's been pretty well received.
So it's going well. And so if someone was to call you up and say, hey, Terii, you've grown up in Japan, you know Japan intimately, you've worked in Japan in different roles here. I'm being sent in to run my company's Japan branch as its CEO. What advice would you give them to be effective as a leader?
Patience, right? Things might take a little bit longer in Japan just because conservative, they have to really understand, digest the change or what you're trying to do. But once you're patient enough and you've got them understood on what you're trying to achieve, it will get done. Whereas my experience in Singapore, Hong Kong, and even in the US, not the case. They'll buy onto it immediately, but then throughout the journey, it's ups and downs, right? Because, oh, no, this is not going to work. Oh, they want to give up. In Japan, they will stay the course as long as you get the beginning right. So
that's an important point, isn't it? Because we rush out with a gas of enthusiasm, and then the spurt runs out, everyone abandons ship and gives up, right? Whereas Japan, they just gum on, just keep going. Right?
Correct. Yeah. Another thing I would like to say, and I've also said this to our new VP when he first came on, is you can't change Japan. So you're the one that's going to need to change. There are a lot of things about Japan that may frustrate you. This country ain't going to change for you, nor the people.
Intellectually, we know that. But often what happens in reality is the person being sent out to Japan, in their marching orders from their boss, it's hey, listen, Japan's underperforming, or we're not satisfied with this or that, and it's up to you to fix it. And if you don't fix it, you're out. All this sort of immense pressure before they even get on the plane. So we're saying, hey, be patient. And they've got this, gun to their head when they arrive. So how do you think they should set it up before they leave or set it up after they get here so they can try and diminish what I would call unrealistic expectations on the part of people who don't know anything about Japan usually?
I think patience doesn't mean don't do anything, right? Patience means putting the time in to build out your vision, your plan, and your change management communication, and do all that. Put more, double down on the change management communication, more time talking to team members. And then you still can feed up to, your APAC boss or whatever, saying, this is the course we're taking. Slow down so we can go faster.
I like that. Slow down to go faster, because often they expect lightning change. Well, you're in Japan now, so this should change immediately. Well, good luck with that.
Correct.
I often think, too, that one of the reasons I started this podcast was because I met so many expat CEOs who were in that position of not really having a good insight into what leading in Japan meant, getting on a plane, coming over here, and then spending 3 or 4 years working it out and then being shipped off to the next destination, after they finally got a clue. And I thought, wouldn't it be good if you could actually get some information from, leaders here about what's involved? So before you even take the job, you can say, well, yes, I'll take the job in Japan, but I want this, this, and this, and this before I take it. Otherwise, send someone else. I ain't going to do it, which I think would be a much smarter move. Yeah. Any other ideas you'd have for them for being a successful, effective leader in Japan?
I had to remember one friend of a friend was working for a Japanese advertising agency, and they were struggling because they felt they would ask their team to do something, but would often be ignored. And the decisions were being ignored and something else would happen. And it's like, Terii, why is this happening? And I do think you have to, not so much in smaller companies, but in big companies, you will find pockets of loyalty. Some might be to a specific group or to a specific leader. I think it's important to navigate where these, I think the right word might be mavens. Who are these influential people in the company, and build your allies? You get them aligned with what you're trying to achieve, and then they already have a following. So find out who those influential people might be. It might not only be rank. Some people are just great with people and just have maybe a good following. Maybe it's where they all came from a previous job. Maybe it's university. Japan's got interesting networks within the company to understand those influencers.
It's also a patronage system here too, isn't it?
Yes.
Like you show fealty, loyalty, and you'll come with me on my rise up through the ranks.
Correct.
I'll bring you with me. And then if that person, for whatever reason, leaves, the people are still there, and they don't have a patron anymore, and they're sort of loyal to the direction or the thinking or the philosophy or the ideology of the previous boss. And then you turn up, particularly if you're a foreigner, and you got nothing. You've got no patronage connections, no loyalty, nothing. You've got to earn the whole thing from zero, which is quite a daunting task at the best of times. Any other things? What about Japanese? Now you've grown up. I don't know. Did you go to Shogakko here in Japanese?
No, I've always went to the
ASAJ?
American school. Yes.
Okay, so they teach Japanese at ASAJ, and so
Not to the level you probably wanted to be.
Well, yeah, my son went to St Mary's and he was doing Japanese there, but fortunately he went to Shogakko first, so he had the good base. But should these leaders learn Japanese?
Oh yeah, I think you got to basically at least learn the conversational aspects. Just be able to do some greeting, small talk with your team members, and the team members will appreciate that, right? That you're actually here trying to learn the culture. I mean, to learn the culture, you got to understand some of the language. Investing in that time, I think, will do wonders. You're interested in their culture, and you're committing to a period of time. And we don't say here how long expats will be here for, right? And a lot of times they don't know themselves.
That's true.
Especially at Hilton, we don't. There might be something in the contract, but it doesn't mean that that'll be the end of the contract or anything like that.
So we think about your definition of leadership. You talk about servant leader before, but what would be your definition of leadership?
Yeah, I think it's the three principles that Hilton has, and I think I'm actually aligned to that. We keep it very simple. There's different leadership models out there. Actually, Hilton's one is quite similar to the Kouzes-Posner ones. Have a big vision, dream big, inspire others, and make things happen. I like the simplicity of these three.
That'll work. Terii, thank you very much for sharing today.
Thank you, Greg.
So, please join us again for the next episode of Japan's top business interviews.